In today's episode, we're going up, up, and away and talking about designing superpowered characters with the ability to fly. If you've ever wondered about what it would be like to zoom around like Superman, stay tuned. Hello, super friends, and welcome back to another episode of Superhero Saturday, where we talk about the arts of superheroes, storytelling, and so much more. My name is Annie, and if you're anything of a super nerd like me, you have wondered what it would be like to have the ability to fly without any help or machines. In fact, superhuman flight is my dream superpower. I have always wanted to be able to soar around and see things from a bird's eye view and just kind of cruise over the mountains and the valleys and the clouds, and I probably dream about this a little more often than is normal. And because of Superman, the ability of unassisted flight is one of the most common tropes in the superhero genre. In fact, it's almost as common as the red cape itself. However, if you are designing your own superpowered character and you want to give them the ability of flight, there are a few things that you should probably consider while you're developing your world. And that superpower character design is what we're going to talk about today. Let's start out first by talking about the physics of unassisted human flight. A lot of critics of the superhero genre and the flight power specifically usually dismiss the power of flight because there are a whole bunch of questions with regard to physics that just seem to go unanswered when dealing with this type of character. It just oftentimes doesn't make sense in the stories that are being put forward, especially the bad ones. And to be fair, there are a lot of things that need to be considered when talking about a character who can just jump up in the air and take off into the atmosphere. Things like oxygen or atmospheric pressure or wind chill. Even government regulations should really be considered when talking about zooming around, especially in major metropolises. Metropolises? Metropolises. I will be the first person to tell you that I'm not really a math-specific type person. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the details of the physics and the application of mathematics, there is a video by the channel Because Science that does a really good job of explaining kind of the different dimensions of why the power of superhuman flight is problematic. But that's all just a disclaimer, because regardless of what type of character you want to create, you can always do that. Just because it doesn't seem very realistic on a surface level doesn't mean that you can't give your character that power. This is still possible and plausible in our fictional universes. It just really helps if you take these extra few steps to flesh out your character and the physics involved with that superpower before you get into creation. Just make sure you at least, acknowledge that these problems with physics exist in some aspect of your work, even if it's just to say it doesn't apply here. But if you want to make a character without being too vague, then this is the video for you, because we are going to go step by step through my process for developing a character with the ability of flight. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. Step 1 is to determine the power source for this superpower. If we want to use Superman as our example, then in various iterations of the comics and the cartoons and the movies and such, Superman's powers generally come from radiation from the yellow sun that imbues his body with superhuman strength and abilities that are beyond the norm. Long story short, he got alien superpowers. Depending on the specifics and which version of Superman you're looking at, it could be as simple as super strength or as weird and complex as gravitational manipulation, which is a pretty cool superpower, actually. I think that would be fun. In fact, originally, Superman didn't even have the power to fly. Remember the old phrase of he can leap tall buildings in a single bound?
Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound, this amazing stranger from the planet Krypton, the Man of Steel, Superman.
That's because he just literally jumped over the buildings. It was just derivative of his super strength. Apparently, once he made it into the realm of hand-drawn animation, the animators kind of got a little loose with it, because hand drawing Superman jumping over buildings would be really challenging. So they just kind of integrated this power of flight into his power set. And then eventually it became canon. And in fact, it became iconic. After that, comic book writers and other creators using the same character just kind of integrated that retroactively into his story. Now, you as a creator can do the same sort of thing with your superpower, just write it off as alien power source and call it a day. That's no big deal. But you should also give a little bit of thought to how this power manifests. Are they just humanoid or do they have wings? Is it drawn from super strength or is it some kind of mental telepathy manipulation thing and they just kind of throw their bodies whichever way they want to go? Is it some kind of elemental power that allows them to manipulate the atmosphere around themselves, giving them the perceived ability of flight? Is it propelled by a magical aura or talisman? In short, what is it that turns your character from an ordinary humanoid being into a high-flying adventurer? That is up to you to decide. The next element we're going to be talking about is the upper limits of this power set. In other words, what are their limits? Is it the sky? The sky is the limits. The sky's the limit. No matter what your character ends up doing with the power of flight, you as the creator should understand what their limits are and establish those from the beginning so that you can have a fully fleshed out character and put them into situations where they understand, the parameters of this character's abilities. For example, can your character float in any direction and any speed at any altitude, or do they have to reach and then maintain a certain velocity to stay airborne? How fast can they fly? How high can they fly? Where can they fly? These are the kind of questions that you can ask. I actually have 2 characters in the Fearless 9 in my original series that have the ability of flight, but they have to jump to get to a certain velocity, and at that point, they can manipulate their willpower to angle and direct them a certain way wherever they want to go. But if they lose consciousness or lose focus, they'll just drop out of the sky like a rock. Now, while this doesn't exactly make complete sense in physics, maybe, again, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, it is something that I thought about and decided to create a guideline for myself that really they shouldn't be able to go out of. It's part of what makes a character design really cohesive and something that will play out in a certain predictable manner in the story. The next step is to talk about the lower limits of the power set, or the cons, or the weaknesses. This is arguably one of the most important elements of character design and unfortunately often the most overlooked. People are usually really excited to give their superpowered characters these really cool abilities that can do whatever they want in the realm of their choosing, but they forget to establish boundaries that make them a little bit more interesting, a little bit more realistic, a little bit more comprehensive. So just as much as you want to be able to understand how fast they can fly, you also want to be able to understand what keeps them from flying exactly everywhere. Unless, of course, that's your power. Again, you decide. Like we touched on earlier, there are a lot of physics involved, so this would be a really good place to consider those physics when establishing weaknesses for your power set. For example, if your character is zooming around at Mach 3, do they need to wear some kind of shield or protection for themselves in case they, accidentally run into a bird? Even just the wind at that speed might make it really difficult to see. What about oxygen? If your superpowered character flies up above a certain level, they may or may not be able to have oxygen molecules around to breathe, much less at speed. What are the ways that this character deals with that? You can also think about temperature. Whenever your character is zooming at a certain speed through, atmosphere, whatever is around them at the time, the wind chill is going to be a serious factor, even over 60 miles per hour. How does your character avoid getting frostbite? And if your character wants to fly all the way up into outer space, what is their protection against pressure or lack thereof? It's because of these problems that I specifically think that when you're designing a character with the power of unassisted flight, you really want to consider giving them an additional superpower of super durability or even invulnerability. That way they aren't in as much danger of becoming sky pizza mid-flight. I added this for my flying characters as well. This is also something to consider when your character might be transporting something other than their own bodies long distances with the power of flight. For example, if your hero is going to rescue a dude bro in distress and fly them out of the supervillain's lair, then that means that the dude bro is going to be going at that same speed and altitude as the hero. Can their bodies withstand that kind of pressure? It's up to you. The next step is to think about side effects for this power on your character. How does the power of flight and probably super durability affect your character's life in every ordinary day? Is flying maybe exhausting or exhilarating or dehydrating or chilling? How does this character recover after a flight that really pushes them to the limits of their abilities? Does this character float when they sleep? Does having the ability of flight help them when they're running late for class, or does the big sonic boom that sounds when they land kind of give their secret identity away? There are lots of ways to think about the impact of the power of flight in your everyday life. So just pretend that you had the power of super flight and think about what you might do with it. I know I do all the time, and probably more often than is reasonable. Anyway, step number 5 in this process is to insert creativity here. After you take all the previous elements into consideration, now is the time to put your own spin on it. For example, if your character has more than one power, how do those powers interact with each other? And then how do those powers and their interactions affect that character's life? And the story. Does your character understand the limits of their superpowers, or are they just kind of guessing as they go along? Do the powers develop over time? Can they get better at flight in some capacity? Like, can they go higher if they practice or faster if they practice? Is there some sort of random element you can throw in there that will totally put off the villain's schemes? Is there anything else that you can or want to do to make your story a little bit more novel and unique? How does your portrayal of the ability of superhuman flight stand out against all of the countless other iterations of this superpower that have come before you? Now's the time to do it. And there you have it, my step-by-step guideline to developing a character with the ability of superhuman flight. Did this spark any creativity in your imagination machine? Are you working on your own character with superhuman flight? Or is there another superpower that you would like me to address and examine in this series? Go ahead and pop those down in the comments below and we'll continue the conversation there. And thank you for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more super-powered content every single Saturday. You can join the team by following us on social media or supporting us on Patreon. And if you want to see my own original superheroes in their high-flying adventures, you can go on over to our website at www.fearless9.com, pick up some books, and maybe get some new favorite characters of your own. Thanks again for watching, Super Friends, and we'll see you next week.